Hi, third grade. This is our reading for May the 13th, and we're starting on page 187. And if we get interrupted, I'll stop and do another one if I need to, but we're going to read it for a few minutes today. We're starting on page 187, Monday the 27th of March, 1944. Dear Kitty, one very big chapter in our history and Heidi should really be about politics, but as this subject doesn't interest me personally very much, I'd rather let it go. So for once, I will devote my whole letter to politics today. It goes without saying that there are many different opinions on this topic, and it's even more logical that it should be a favorite subject for discussion in such critical times, but it's just simply stupid that there should be so many quarrels over it. They may speculate, laugh, abuse, and gamble. Let them do what they will as long as they stew in their own juice and don't quarrel, because the consequences are usually unpleasant. The people from outside bring with them a lot of news that is not true. However, up till now our radio hasn't lied to us. Hink, Meep, Kufus, Ellie, and Kraler all show ups and downs in their political moods. Hink least of all. Political feeling here in the secret annex is always about the same. During the countless arguments over invasions, air raids, speeches, etc., one always hears the countless cries of impossible or Gott's willing if they're going to start now, however long it is going to last. It's going splendidly, first class, good. Optimists and pessimists, that's people that are thinking positively and negatively. Optimists are positive thinkers, pessimists are negative thinkers. Optimists and pessimists, and above all, don't let's forget the realists who give their opinions with untiring energy, and just as with everything else, each one thinking he is right. It annoys a certain lady that her spouse has such unparalleled faith in the British, and a certain gentleman attacks his lady because of her teasing and disparaging remarks about his beloved nation. They never seem to tire of it. I have discovered something. The effects are stupendous, just like pricking someone with a pin and waiting to see how they jump. This is what I do. Begin on politics. One question, one word, one sentence, and at once they're off. So all she has to do is start talking about politics, and all the grown-ups get in a big discussion about it. Just as if the German Werkmarkt news bulletins and the English BBC were not enough, they have now introduced special air raid announcements. In one word, magnificent, but on the other hand, often disappointing too. The British are making a non-stop business of their air attacks with the same zest as the Germans make a business of lying. The radio, therefore, goes on early in the morning and is listened to at all hours of the day until 9, 10, and often 11 o'clock in the evening. This is certainly a sign that the grown-ups have infinite patience, but it also means the power of absorption of their brains is pretty limited, with exceptions, of course. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. 1 or 2 news bulletins would be ample per day, but the old geese, well, I've said my piece. Abritur program radio on Frank Phillips, or Her Majesty Queen Wilhelmina. They each get their turn and an ever-attentive ear, and if they're not eating or sleeping, then they're sitting around the radio and discussing food, sleep, and politics. Ugh, it gets so boring, and quite a job not to become a dull old stick oneself. Politics can't do much more harm to the parents. I must mention one shining exception. A speech for our beloved Winston Churchill is quite perfect. 9 o'clock on Sunday evening. The teapot stands with a cozy over it on the table, and the guests come in. Dussel next to the radio on the left, Mr. Van Daan in front of it with Peter beside him. Mummy next to Mr. Van Daan and Mrs. Van Daan behind him, and Pim at the table. Margot and I beside. I see I haven't described very clearly how we sit. The gentlemen puff away at their pipes. Peter's eyes are popping out of his head with the strain of listening. Mummy wearing a long, dark negligee, and Mrs. Van Daan trembling because of the planes, which take no notice of the speech but fly blithely on towards Essen. Daddy sipping tea, Margot and I united in a sisterly fashion by the sleeping Mochi, who is monopolizing both our knees. Margot's hair is in curlers. I am wearing a nightdress, which is much too small, too narrow, and too short. It all looks so intimate, snug, peaceful, and this time it is too. Yet I await the consequences with horror. They can hardly wait till the end of the speech, stamping their feet, so impatient are they to get down to discussing it. Brr, 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 they egg each other on until the arguments lead to discord and quarrels. Yours, Annie. So the tension is mounting in where they live, and people are listening to the politics just like they do today, just like the coronavirus. And some people are like, this is all a sham. Some people are like, no, it's not. So people are always arguing about politics, but if you were especially in this quarantine of being in a secret annex and not knowing if you were going to come out alive or not, or if you were going to be taken by the German Nazis and put into a concentration camp and killed, the tension would mount and people would tend to argue over their political feelings. Tuesday, March 28, 1944. Dearest Kitty, I could write a lot more about politics, but I have heaps of other things to tell you today. First, Mommy has more or less forbidden me to go upstairs so often because, according to her, Mrs. Van Daan is jealous. Secondly, Peter has invited us to join upstairs. I don't know whether it's just out of politeness or whether he really means it. Thirdly, I went and asked Daddy if he thought I need to pay any regard to Mrs. Van Daan's jealousy, and he didn't think so. What next? Mummy is cross, perhaps jealous too. Daddy doesn't grudge us these times together and thinks it's nice that we get on so well. Margot is fond of Peter too, but feels that two's company and three's a crowd. Mummy thinks Peter is in love with me. Quite frankly, I only wish he were. Then we'd be quits and really be able to get to know each other. She also says that he keeps on looking at me. Now, I suppose that's true, but still I can't help it if he looks at my dimples and we wink at each other occasionally, can I? I'm in a very difficult position. Mummy is against me and I'm against her. Daddy closes his eyes and tries not to see the silent battle between us. Mummy is sad because she does really love me, while I'm not in the least bit sad because I don't think she understands. And Peter, I don't want to give Peter up. He's such a darling. I admire him so. It can grow into something beautiful between us. Why do the old ones have to poke their noses in all the time? Luckily, I'm quite used to hiding my feelings, and I manage extremely well not to let them see how mad I am about him. Will he ever say anything? Will I ever feel his cheek against mine like I felt Patel's cheek in my dream? Oh, Peter and Patel, you are the one and the same. They don't understand us. Won't they ever grasp that we are happy just sitting together and not saying a word? They don't understand what has driven us together like this. Oh, when will all these difficulties be overcome? And yet it is good to overcome them, because then the end will be all the more wonderful. When he lies with his head on his arm with his eyes closed, then he is still a child. When he plays with Boshi, he is loving. When he carries potatoes or anything heavy, then he is strong. When he goes and watches the shooting or looks for burglars in the darkness, then he is brave. And when he is awkward and clumsy, then he is just a pet. I like it much better if he explains something to me than when I have to teach him. I would really adore him to be my superior in almost everything. What do we care about the two mothers? Oh, but if only he would speak. Yours, Annie. So she's really admiring Peter and falling more and more in love or infatuation with him. Wednesday, March the 29th, 1944. Dear Kitty, Bolkestein, an MP, was speaking on the Dutch news from London, and he said that they ought to make a collection of diaries and letters after the war. Of course, they all made a rush at my diary immediately. Just imagine how interesting it would be if I were to publish a romance of the secret annex. The title alone would be enough to make people think it was a detective story. And then you have a 1 right there above the title, the word title. So you go down to the bottom of the page, and it says, the original title of this diary was Het Achterhuis. There is no exact translation into English, the nearest being the secret annex. But seriously, it would seem quite funny 10 years after the war if we Jews were to tell how we lived and what we ate and talked about here. Although I tell you a lot, still, even so, you only know very little of our lives. How scared the ladies are during the air raids. For instance, on Sunday, when 350 British planes dropped 500,000 kilos of bombs on Ajudan, how the houses trembled like a wisp of grass in the wind, and who knows how many epidemics now rage. You don't know anything about all these things, and I would need to keep on writing the whole day if I were to tell you everything in detail. Peter have to line up for vegetables and all kinds of other things. Doctors are unable to visit the sick because if they turn their backs on their cars for a moment, they are stolen. Burglaries and thefts abound, so much so that you wonder what has taken hold of the Dutch for them suddenly to have become such thieves. Little children of 8 and 11 years break the windows of people's homes and steal whatever they can lay their hands on. No one dares to leave his house unoccupied for 5 minutes, because if you go, your things go too. Every day there are announcements in the newspapers offering rewards for the return of lost property, typewriters, Persian rugs, electric clocks, etc., etc. Electric clocks in the streets are dismantled. Public telephones are pulled to pieces, down to the last thread. Morale among the population can't be good. The weekly rations are not enough to last for 2 days, except the coffee substitute. So they don't even have real coffee. They have something that is a substitute for it. The invasion is a long time coming, and the men have to go to Germany. The children are ill or undernourished. Everyone is wearing old clothes and old shoes. A new sole, and that would be like the bottom part of your shoe, costs 7.50 florins in the black market. Moreover, hardly any of the shoemakers will accept shoe repairs, or if they do, you have to wait months, during which time the shoe often disappears. There's one thing in the midst of it all, which is that as the food gets worse and the measures against the people more severe, so sabotage against the authorities steadily increases. The people in the food offices, the police, officials, they all either work with their fellow citizens and help them, or they tell tales on them and have them sent to prison. Fortunately, only a small percentage of Dutch people are on the wrong side. Yours, Annie. Friday, the 31st of March, 1944. Dear Kitty, think of it. It's still pretty cold, but most people have been without coal for about a month. Pleasant, eh? In general, public feeling over the Russian front is optimistic again, because that is terrific. You know, I don't write much about politics, but I must just tell you where they are now. They are right by the Polish border and have reached the Pruth near Romania. They are close to Odessa. Every evening here they expect an extra communique from Stalin. They fire off so many salvos in Moscow to celebrate their victories that the city must rumble and shake just about every day, whether they think it's fun to pretend that the war is close at hand, or that they know of no other way of expressing their joy. I don't know. Hungary is occupied by German troops. There are still 1 million Jews there, so they too will have had it now. The chatter about Peter and me has calmed down a bit now. We are very good friends, are together a lot, and discuss every imaginable subject. It is awfully nice never to have to keep a check on myself, as I would have to with other boys whenever we get on precarious ground. We were talking, for instance, about blood, and via that subject we began talking about menstruation. He thinks women are pretty tough. Why on earth? My life has improved greatly improved. God has not left me alone and will not leave me alone. Yours, Annie. Saturday, April the 1st, 1944. Dear Kitty, and yet everything is still so difficult. You can guess what I mean, can't you? I am so longing for a kiss, the kiss that is so long in coming. I wonder if all the time he still regards me as a friend. Am I nothing more? You know, and I know that I'm strong, that I can carry most of my burdens alone. I have never been used to sharing my troubles with anyone. I have never clung to my mother. But now I would so love to lay my head on his shoulders just once and remain still. I can't. I simply can't ever forget that dream of Peter's cheek when it was all so good. Wouldn't he long for it too? Is it that he is too shy to acknowledge his love? Why does he want me with him so often? Oh, why doesn't he speak? I'd better stop. I must be quiet. I shall remain strong, and with a bit of patience the other will come too. But, and that is the worst of it, it looks just as if I'm running after him. I am always the one who goes upstairs. He doesn't come to me. But that is just because of the rooms, and he is sure to understand the difficulty. And yes, oh yes, and there's more he'll understand. Love, Annie. Monday, April the 3rd, 1944. Dear Kitty, contrary to my usual custom, I will for once write more fully about food, because it has become very difficult and important matter not only here in the secret annex, but in the whole of Holland, all Europe, and even beyond. In the 21 months that we've spent here, we have been through a good many food cycles. You'll understand what that means in a minute. When I talk of food cycles, I mean periods in which one has nothing else to eat but one particular dish or kind of vegetable. We've had nothing but endive for a long time, day in, day out. Endive with sand, endive without sand, stew with endive, boiled or in casserole, then it was spinach, and after that followed kohlrabi, salsify, cucumbers, tomatoes, sauerkraut, etc., etc. For instance, it's really disagreeable to eat a lot of sauerkraut for lunch and supper every day, but you do it if you're hungry. However, we have the most delightful period of all now because we don't get any fresh vegetables at all. Our weekly menu for supper consists of kidney beans, pea soup, potatoes with dumplings, potato shallot, and by the grace of God, occasionally turnip tops or rotten carrots, and then the kidney beans once again. We eat potatoes at every meal, beginning with breakfast because of the bread's shortage. We make our soup from kidney or haricot beans, potatoes, julienne soup in packets, French beans in packets, kidney beans in packets. Everything contains beans, not to mention the bread. In the evening, we always have potatoes with gravy substitute, and thank goodness we've still got it, beetroot salad. I must still tell you about the dumplings, which we make out of government flour, water, and yeast. They are so sticky and tough. They lie in stones in one's stomach. Oh well. The great attraction each week is a slice of liver sausage and jam on dry bread, but we're still alive, and quite often we even enjoy our poor meals. Yours, Annie. Okay, that makes me feel really sorry for her, because not only is she so confined and worried about whether she'll live through this war or if her family will be taken, their food is horrible. And the variety of it, there's no variety. It's just the same yucky stuff. Not even like, mashed potatoes and chicken fried steak a lot. It's just yuck. Tuesday, April the 4th, 1944. Dear Kitty, for a long time I haven't had any idea of what I was working for anymore. The end of the war is so terribly far away, so unreal, like a fairy tale. If the war isn't over by September, I shan't go to school anymore because I don't want to be 2 years behind. Peter filled my days, nothing but Peter, dreams and thoughts, until Saturday, when I felt so utterly miserable. Oh, it was terrible. I was holding back my tears all the while I was with Peter, then laughed with Van Don over a lemon punch. Was cheerful and excited, but the moment I was alone, I knew that I would have to cry my heart out. So, clad in my nightdress, I let myself go and slipped down on the floor. First, I said my long prayer very earnestly. Then I cried with my head on my arms, my knees bent up on the bare floor, completely folded up. One large sob brought me back to earth again, and I quelled my tears, or she stopped her tears, because I didn't want them to hear anything in the next room. Then I began trying to talk some courage into myself. I could only say, I must. Completely stiff from the unnatural position, I fell against the side of the bed and fought on till I climbed into bed again just before 10:30. It was over. And now it's all over. I must work so as not to be a fool, to get on, to become a journalist, because that's what I want. She wants to be a writer, like for a newspaper or a reporter or a magazine. I know that I can. A couple of my stories are good. My descriptions of the secret annex are humorous. There's a lot in my diary that speaks, but whether I have real talent remains to be seen. Eva's Dream is my best fairy tale, and the queer thing about it is that I don't know where it comes from. Quite a lot of Cindy's life, Katie's life, is good too, but on the whole, it's nothing. I am the best and sharpest critic of my own work. I know myself what is and what is not written well. Anyone who doesn't write doesn't know how wonderful it is. I used to bemoan the fact that I couldn't draw at all, but now I am more than happy that I can at least write. And if I haven't any talent for writing books or newspaper articles, well, then I can always write for myself. I want to get on. I can't imagine that I would have to lead the same sort of life as Mummy and Mrs. Van Don and all the women who do the work and are then forgotten. I must have something besides a husband and children, something that I can devote myself to. I want to go on living even after my death, and therefore I'm grateful to God for giving me this gift, this possibility of developing myself and of writing, of expressing all that is in me. I can shake off everything as I write. My sorrows disappear, my courage is reborn. But, and that is the great question, will I ever be able to write anything great? Will I ever become a journalist or a writer? I hope so. Oh, I hope so very much, for I can recapture everything when I write, my thoughts, my ideals, and my fantasies. I haven't done anything more to Katie's life for ages. In my mind, I know exactly how to go on, but somehow it doesn't flow from my pen. Perhaps I shall never finish it. It may land up in the waste paper basket or the fire. That's a horrible idea, but then I think to myself, at the age of 14 and with so little experience, how can you write about philosophy? So I go on with fresh courage. I think I shall succeed because I want to write. Thursday, April the 6th, 1944. You asked me what my hobbies and interests were, so I want to reply. I warn you, however, that there are heaps of them, so don't get a shock. First of all, writing, but that hardly counts as a hobby. Number 2, family trees. I've been searching for family trees of the French, German, Spanish, English, Austrian, Russian, Norwegian, and Dutch royal families in all the newspapers, books, and pamphlets I can find. I've made great progress with a lot of them. For as long as time already, I've been taking down notes from all the biographies and history books that I read. I even copy out many passages of history. My third hobby then is history, on which Daddy has already bought me a lot of books. I can hardly wait for the day that I shall be able to comb through the books in a public library. Now listen to her, guys. I encourage you to check out books in the library this summer if the library opens up. But you know, that's not a passion that most of us seem to have. I love to go to the library, but not a lot of people do. And here she is so hungry to be able to go to the library and just go through it and look. Number 4 is Greek and Roman mythology. I have various books about this too. Other hobbies are film stars and family photos. Mad on books and reading. Have a great liking for history of art, poets, and painters. I may go in for music later on. I have a great loathing for algebra, geometry, and figures. I enjoy all the other school subjects, but history above all. Yours, Annie. We're going to stop there for Wednesday, and then I'll get back with you for Thursday. Bye-bye.